So Luffy, after having just whirled around like crazy, managed to punch through Kaido's face and drop the Yonko on his back. And after doing so, Luffy would proceed to bounce on the rubberized ground beneath himself while he wondered what he should call that last move. Kaido remained on the ground for a moment but would ask Luffy to answer a question of his. He would then clutch onto his own face and ask Luffy who he was, which sort of confused Luffy. He doesn't seem to have any idea about his own relation to Joy Boy. Now Zunisha, an old friend of Joy Boy's, would speak of how nostalgic the rhythm was, referring of course to the so-called drums of liberation created by Luffy's heartbeat in this form. Zunisha would call out to Joy Boy, however this was not expressed towards Luffy, but rather the original Joy Boy. It would speak of how it was like its old friend had returned and just how exciting it all was. It would speak of how it all felt like the work of fate, and that in recognizing this, it feels that they should place their faith in this boy, Luffy. And from there, Luffy would respond to Kaido's question by letting it be known that he was Monkey D. Luffy, the man who would surpass him and become the king of the pirates. So the same usual declaration. And so beyond the excessive laughter, he is still the very same Luffy we all know and love, which for many fans I'm sure is a big relief of sorts. And from here, Kaido would respond with a similar relief as he was happy to see that Luffy was still just as loudmouth as ever. As he smiled, he would inform Luffy that what he was currently experiencing was a Devil Fruit awakening, which was a result of a Devil Fruit user's mind and body getting to the point of being able to truly harness the potential of their fruit. And that Luffy most definitely had quite the ridiculous power indeed, which is the very same word used as Igorose previously. This is the most ridiculous power in the world. Kaido would then speak of all that he had lost in this conflict of theirs, from his men, to his castle, to everything he had built and established in Wano. Yet he imagined the very same could be said for Luffy, which prompted Luffy to angrily proclaim that it was not over just yet, that he would be taking back everything Kaido had stolen no matter what, which prompted Kaido to whirl around his Saikai, which hit Luffy all over, again stretching portions of his body like putty. But he would be quick to snap back into shape and return the favor to Kaido as he rapidly punched him, and did so while rubberizing Kaido's body to allow for the points of impact to abnormally stretch. And all throughout all these attacks, these two just had their Conqueror's Haki rippling. It is truly so astonishing to see. But suddenly Luffy began coughing to himself. As it turns out, the fumes created by the burning castle had finally made their way to the roof as the whole thing was burning down at this point. The issue has been present for a while, but now the flames have spread to truly terrifying levels. Kaido had emphasized the fact that at this rate, thousands of Luffy's allies would be trapped down below and would burn alive. However, Luffy would shrug this off as he had confidence in them. He decided to leave everything down there up to them, and so he had nothing to be concerned about beyond the fulfillment of his end of the deal, which required that he take Kaido down. And he said this as he raced towards the Oni, and to this Kaido would ready himself and then, by way of his weapon, send a rippling amount of air that Luffy was able to dodge by stretching himself up in ridiculous fashion as a boulder behind them immediately split in two from the attack, from which point we'd be taken to the fiery situation beneath them both as the life floor was almost entirely engulfed by the flames. Some would of course seek to put it out, but again, they didn't exactly possess access to any water. The fire was spreading further than ever, and things weren't looking so good. Chopper would make his way to Nami and was absolutely losing his mind. He was glad to see her, but had no clue what they were supposed to do against the fire. He tried, but could not find Zoro, Sanji, Frankie, Usopp, Robin, Brook, or Jinbei. And yeah, he really did list them all off. Together, they would begin to wonder how they would be able to reach their friends as the entirety of Onigashima was going up in flames like a giant pyre. And despite them being in this place together thinking of others, it wasn't as if they were safe themselves. There was nowhere left for them to run to. Their only hope at this point seemed to be finding a way to land this thing, but even that was incredibly unlikely. Frantically, Chopper would question if Zeus couldn't just create some rain, however the flames were far too big at this point and would just end up consuming him in the process of such an attempt. We would then transition to the basement where things looked to be just as perilous. Lost Crew would then be seen having troubles of their own, as Beppo in particular, as a polar bear mink, struggled immensely in such heat and needed to be carried by his allies. After them would be Brook and Robin. And when some of these samurai saw Brook, they would be horrified and presume his visage should be on account of the flames. Brook would correct them, however, and advocate for them to find a way to get everyone to safety, while Robin wondered if there might not be a way. And Sanji would have just as much trouble from within the pleasure hall trying to lead the ladies to safety. Inbi of the numbers would find that his hand was charred in his attempt to escape, which Alpo would disregard while commanding him to break the wall down like Chris Jericho to save them both, even if it cost him an arm. As far as he was concerned, there wasn't a point to having such a massive body if you weren't willing to use it, which really just got on Imbi's nerves and started to begin a bit of tension between the two. To follow would be Usopp, who would make use of his plants that would begin spraying water around like a sprinkler. But this thing was absolutely useless, as it wouldn't be long before these flames claimed it as well, much to Usopp's shock. Hamlet, the giraffe smile user, would let Usopp know that he was wasting his energy here, but Usopp, with tears running from his eyes, would tell the man to shut up, as he had made a promise to Izo. Izo, who had previously recognized him to be God Usopp, and so he was going to save Kin, Kiku, and himself, and Hamlet certainly didn't want to be left out here. Frankie would then be seen racing to any semblance of safety himself as he carried Zoro on his back. Meanwhile, he didn't even know which way they should go in. Regardless, he absolutely needed to find Chopper or Zoro would not make it. And Frankie too would have some smile users following him around, hoping to be saved. As unbeknownst to them, their saviors were finally in the midst of acting, as Raizo would question if Jinbei was ready before thanking him for placing his faith in him. Jinbei was prepared for what was to come, as he would never doubt someone his Captain Luffy had decided to place his faith in, a sentiment which honored Raizo, as the feeling was mutual. He would then think back to that unforgettable day in which he swore to never be unprepared, and that scene was rather similar to this one. He would express that at the time, he couldn't protect Odin, and in the meantime, Momonosuke and the rest of the family nearly burned in the castle. That despite his ninjutsu, aka his devil fruit abilities, he was unable to protect anyone, and this is a failure he could never make up for. And it is for this reason that he refused to ever be so helpless ever again. And in another instance, while on Zou, he had observed the rain by way of Zunisha washing itself, an enormous amount of water which he would request to take some of. In the present, he wouldn't allow the man who had so valiantly fought beside them to die in a simple fire, and so he would call upon his water scroll. This was Elephant Bath Restoration, as a huge torrent of water would make its way to and envelop Jinbei, from which point you begin to use his fishman Jujutsu to redirect the current and spread it elsewhere. Blackback and some of the other minks would be the first to encounter the water and be utterly shocked by it, as it sprawled out throughout the entirety of the enclosure. They were intent on flooding every floor for the sake of rescuing their comrades. We'd have Killer refusing to be carried around, but those who held on to him would not let him go, despite having nowhere left to run. Although they had felt a whole lot of quaking lately, as it would suddenly be saved by the water as well. And with that out of the way, from there we would have the necessary tackling of yet another major issue, and that was the replacement of Kaido's clouds for the sake of keeping them aloft, which was only becoming more and more pressing as Kaido seemed to be at his limit. Yamato, now tugging on Momonosuke's draconic whiskers, would express that it was up to him now, as this was really and truly their only option all along. And Momonosuke was certainly not a fan of this revelation, which would be followed by a truly godly moment from Luffy, as approaching Kaido from the storm clouds above, he was wielding a bolt of lightning in his hand and was ready to strike, and Nell is absolutely quaking in his boots. Luffy's Devil Fruit awakening allows him to rubberize anything and everything, for as wacky and ridiculous as Luffy's Gear 5th may be, it is not as if Oda has thrown away all the rules, as some people for whatever reason seem to believe. Oda still very much abides by them despite the extreme cases of exaggeration seen with all this. Again, this power is just so faithful to the series that is One Piece. I mean, I am all for serious transformations and the like, but this is One Piece. Yes, there may be very serious story elements to all this, but this is the same series where a secret agent makes noodles with his nose. The same series where a bazooka ate a devil fruit and became a dog. So yeah, let's keep our expectations as reasonable as possible, shall we? Luffy has been able to run on the air by rubberizing it, and now has rubberized a lightning bolt for the sake of holding it, which he certainly can, as he himself does not conduct electricity. He is rubber. So this was harmless to him, yet incredibly dangerous for others. And the power of lightning is nothing to scoff at either, as Enel's Logia-based lightning manipulation was revered enough for it to be considered an invincible power. Luffy has a very big smile on his face, and the expression was mutual for Kaido as well. And truly, these smiles are contagious. This is it. We are nearing the finale. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.